guys, I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to be doing a monthly recommendations video. This is a Goodreads group that was created by two booktubers. I have the Goodreads group linked down below, and every month they have a topic where they recommend books. And this month's topic is required reading. Basically, we're going to talk about the books that we feel should be required reading for school. This particular topic was a little tough for me because I've been really lucky in school and I've read a lot of great books, but I did come up with 4 books that I feel should be required reading in school. The first one is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I think this book is incredibly readable because it's written in an epistolary form, so it's like a diary, and the language is very simple and it has a lot of layers to it that could, make for some really great discussions. The Color Purple is a really well-known book. It's basically a book about a woman who has been abused pretty much her entire life. She's married to this man who mistreats her, and this man decides to have an affair, and this woman pretty much changes her life. So that's the best way that I can describe it without giving too much away. The narrator finds her voice throughout the book, and I think that's a great topic to discuss with students, especially young students. So that would be my first pick. My second pick would be The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. The Handmaid's Tale is another well-known book, but the premise is pretty simple. This is a dystopian society where most women are unable to give birth. And so what ends up happening is that women that are able to give birth are kind of rounded up and are considered handmaids, and they're used by certain powerful families to give birth. That's basically their only purpose. There is a Hulu series adaptation to this book, but I would not recommend it for students, even senior students. It's a little out there. But the book itself doesn't read like that. I think this book has a lot to unpack. Even though it's short, it has a lot of different themes that could be discussed in a classroom. Things like, the government's authority in our lives, dystopian societies in general, and feminism, obviously, fighting for yourself and risking things, even if it means death. Those are always interesting topics to discuss. And I remember in my English honors classes, we always kind of had that critical eye in the different books that we read, and we talked about some hard things, and those were always the more memorable books for me. So I think The Handmaid's Tale would be a great pick. The third book that I would recommend is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This was a speech that Virginia Woolf gave to a women's college, and I hesitate to call it a book. I guess you would say it's more of an essay, but I'm just going to say it's a book for the purpose of this video. This was actually one of the first book reviews that I did on my channel, and I discussed this book and what it means, and I still to this day remember the feeling that I had when I finished it. The whole premise of that speech is that a woman would be able to accomplish more things, for example, be a better writer, if she had a room of her own. A room of her own is more kind of like a symbol, because back in the day, women have these responsibilities that are kind of imposed upon them. They're mothers, housewives, they have to be the ones responsible for the children, for having children, and they have so many responsibilities that they don't have time for themselves. And so this speech was Virginia Woolf speaking to all of these female college students, letting them know that if a woman were to have the same rights or benefits that a man has, she would be just as successful as men. And so that is obviously a topic that could still be talked about today. And so I think it would make a great book to discuss in a classroom. And the last book that I have here is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I would also hesitate to call this a book. Technically, it's a letter that the author is writing to his son about race and being black in America, being a young black man in America. Racism is such a hot topic, but unfortunately it's so prevalent today that it cannot be ignored. And I think this book would be a great book to discuss with students in the US specifically, that are kind of seeing what's going on in this political climate and are kind of seeing, the Black Lives Matter movement and, our current president and how he's approaching certain events. And so I think this would be a great book to discuss. I think what I took the most out of this book was how Coates is speaking from the point of view of a father who loves his son dearly, who's afraid for his son, and who's angry that this is the reality. And I'm never going to be a young black man in America or a black person in America. And for him to be able to put me in that point of view and put me in those shoes in a way, I thought that was just so powerful and something that people really do need to read more of. We're just so divided by what we don't understand. And so I think this book would definitely be one that would push teachers as well as students to think about things in a different way. And I think those are the books that should be discussed in school, and those are the books and topics that should be discussed in school, especially with young, impressionable minds. I think that one would be probably the most important out of this whole bunch. So those are the books that I think should be required reading. Let me know down in the comments if you have any ideas of what you would make required reading in schools, or if you've read any of these books, or if you have any recommendations for me. I'd love to hear about them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.